Ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube universe, what is going on with you on this Sunday morning? It is Sunday, March 24th, 2024, roughly 11:19 a.m. California time. I am, of course, your always gracious host, Fallon, from GoNootropics.com, coming at you with the coffee. Cheers. We are sipping the coffee on a rainy Sunday morning here in California. This is day 7, baby. Cold turkey Kratom withdrawal. And I think we're coming around the mountain, ladies and gentlemen. I think she's coming around the mountain. Last night was the best sleep I've had. Got a solid 6 hours of sleep, which is unheard of. 6 hours of sleep on night number 6. And, that's kind of when you start to feel things start to clear up. Some of you guys mentioned using like higher doses of the taurine and the L-theanine, which I did. I took a gram of the L-theanine last night. I took 5 grams of the taurine. We got a huge bag of taurine. And yeah, I think that was very beneficial. That was provided a nice sedative effect, the higher doses of some of these things, So it could have been a mixture of these higher doses relieving the restlessness, but it could also be just day number 7. Things are just naturally starting to improve as well. So we're on day number 7, baby. Day 7 in the books. Woke up pretty refreshed, I don't know if because I've only been getting like 1 to 3 hours of sleep for the past like 3 days, like 3 hours of sleep on a good night, if my body is so exhausted that I'm entering into like a partial shutdown mode and my body's just kind of forcing itself to fall asleep. But last night, I felt that restlessness, especially in the arms last night, but still, I managed to go to sleep, get 6 hours, and woke up today feeling, pretty good. So things are starting to improve here on day number 7. And it's just about keeping the train rolling, On day number 7, it gets harder to justify cracking the more you go, because it's like if you only have a couple days, you could kind of justify cracking, but once you get like 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, it gets harder to justify throwing away all that time. It's like after 7 days, you don't want to throw that all away just to restart the process. It's like throwing away and making all that pain pointless, So after day number 7, once you start to improve, and you kind of see the roots sprouting beyond the soil, you don't want to throw that away. So if you could just power through the first 7 days, the first week, just get through it. I know some of you guys have been on 50 grams of Kratom, 60 grams of Kratom for years. Some of you guys 5 years, 6 years, some of you even longer. You've been using Kratom for many years at high doses, 50 grams per day. And well, I salute you. Your experience is probably gonna be a little different than me, somebody who's after a year. This is the thing with me and Kratom. After a year, I can't justify using it any longer, because after a year, it's like my body starts literally rejecting the stuff. It's the negative side effects become too apparent. They become too invasive. After about a year, I rethink my life choices. I start to rethink all these things. I start to rethink the whole thing after a year. So I can't imagine using Kratom for 5 years straight, because after a year, it just becomes, taking Kratom becomes so painful. Taking Kratom becomes just such a burden that I've never really gone beyond using Kratom for a year and then coming off. That's kind of been my pattern. It's like use Kratom for a year, come off of it, go back to it, use Kratom for a year, come off it, go back to it. That's kind of been my pattern. And this current quit has been by far the hardest, because I was this go around pushing kind of, the highest doses I've ever taken, using up to 40 grams per day. And this was by far the hardest go. So, for those of you watching these videos, your experience might be different. Your experience will mirror mine a little bit, but I could see if you have been taking Kratom for a very long time in these higher doses, how this could kind of maybe be drawn out a little bit more for you. And likewise, if you've been using Kratom, for a year, kind of similar to me, similar doses, you could probably expect the same. If you've been using Kratom kind of in the lower amounts for less time, well, you're gonna probably get off easier, right? It just makes sense that, yeah, if you're using Kratom a long time, your process might take a little bit longer, especially if you're older. If you're young in your 20s going through this, you're definitely gonna have an easier time versus somebody in their 30s. And if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, of course that's going to be harder. Your current state of health and all that. But this is day number 7, and it feels like we're on the tail end of this. I don't want to speak too soon. And, maybe tonight's going to be horrible. Maybe tonight the restlessness will come back. That's kind of happened in the past to me. The restlessness seems to disappear, and then it annoyingly comes back. It's like, I remember one night I had no restless legs, and then like a couple nights later they seemed to come back, which was really frustrating. But this is kind of like, if I think back to the other times, this is kind of how it went. If I could get past the first week, if you get past the first week, things tend to get better, and now it just kind of feels like I'm entering into that phase where you just gotta deal with those kind of smaller pause symptoms. It's like once you're off a week, 2 weeks, a month, a couple months, and a lot of people say they deal with the depression and the apathy, months down the road, and it's just the question of, well, Is that the Kratom pause, or is that just like that's how you were before you got on Kratom? That's why you went to the Kratom in the first place. And it's about solving that piece of the puzzle, right? It's about solving, some of these reasons why you took Kratom in the first place, and kind of looking back, rolling back the tapes, baby, rolling back the tapes, and thinking of the times I used Kratom. Most of the time, the dose, when I took my dose, like 7 times out of 10, it's like just made me kind of feel worse. Yeah, Kratom hooks you because sometimes it really delivers a nice experience. Sometimes, yeah, you do get that nice mood boost. You do get that nice euphoria. But after a while, those nice doses are few and far between. And kind of towards the end of all this, and even in the beginning, when I was using Kratom in a more, you could say responsible manner, I would notice that it was like hit or miss. Sometimes it would be good, but a lot of times I'd take a dose and I'd just become more lethargic. If there was a good aspect of the dose, it was short-lived, 20, 30 minutes of feeling relatively okay, quickly followed by just irritation, lethargy, and just not feeling good at all. So I think once you get past that 7-day period and you start really racking up the days, racking up the months, maybe even racking up the years, it's important to remember that taking Kratom was rarely good. It's like it sometimes would deliver on the promise, right? It would sometimes deliver on the promises of Kratom, the glory of Kratom sometimes, but looking back, it was like 7 times out of 10 the dose was. I only took it to just because I felt those withdrawals coming. I only took it to deal with like those low level withdrawals, and taking it never really delivered on the promise, which was, man, this stuff was supposed to make me feel good. And most of the times it really didn't. It made me feel worse, you know. So it's like 7 days and beyond, 2 weeks, 3 months, 1 year and beyond, you know, you got to look back and realize that it really wasn't that great. You know, it's like the nostalgia part of the brain, you know. I think people with depression, they have a lot of this like nostalgia type thinking, you know what I'm saying? It's like they look back on the past. It's like nostalgic way, you know. You might listen to music you used to listen to, and it's like this nostalgic escapism where you're remembering the past actually better than it was, you know. Sometimes I do that. I look back on, you know, the past, like maybe in my 20s or my teenage years, or you know, maybe in my early 30s, and I'm reaching back thinking that the past was somehow better than it was, thinking that some of these experiences I had were better than they were. But if I really take an objective look at it, it was like they weren't good at all. You know, some of these things I look back on with this feeling of nostalgia. You know, it's like you're escaping into the past, and your brain plays this trick on you and tricks you into thinking that the past was better than it was, when it was really not that great. And after a few months, at least this happens for me, I look back onto my times taking Kratom, remembering Kratom for better than it really was, you know. And it's like 7 times out of 10 my dose just makes me feel like shit, like total shit, lethargic, extremely irritable, man, just so irritated over every little thing. And it's just like months down the road, you have to remember that. You have to remember Kratom for what it truly is, not what you think it is, you know, because objectively it's terrible stuff. Most of the time it's not working, especially after you develop a tolerance. It really turns on you, man, in a bad way. And even during my more responsible days, it was like that promise that Kratom gives you, it rarely delivered on, you know. It was like 3 times out of 10 it really delivered on its promise, but more times than not it was like I would take a dose and it's like, this is just terrible. I'm more tired, I'm more lethargic, you know. So this is day number 7 in the books. Feels like she's coming around the mountain, right? Feels like she's coming around the mountain. So, you know, we're going to keep the train rolling. Shout out to those of you who mentioned taking the higher doses of that stuff. I don't know why I didn't think about that. I think because like high doses of L-theanine kind of tend to put me into like a low-level depression. You know, if I take L-theanine beyond 300 milligrams, I tend to get like this low-level apathy depression thing. So I think that's why I never really pushed those higher doses. But when you're dealing with the restless legs and these things, it's like the higher doses of some of this stuff could prove to be, you know, therapeutic, very therapeutic. And so I think that helped a little more minimally than the doses I was taking them in. I was only taking, you know, a gram of taurine, 300 milligrams of L-theanine. But you guys were right. The higher doses of those nootropics really did. They were slightly more effective than they were at the lower doses. So I think, yeah, pushing higher doses of some of these things like the L-theanine, the taurine, you shouldn't take high doses of everything. You should research what you're taking. But the L-theanine and the taurine is generally safe, you know. So, yeah, you guys are putting a lot of good recommendations in the comments. Some of you guys mentioned, asked me if I tried a jacuzzi, like sauna, cold bath thing, and I don't have I don't know, where do you go to get access to a sauna? I guess the gym. You go to the gym for the sauna, but I can't really imagine dragging my carcass to the gym to go use the sauna. But I could definitely see that helping, because I have been taking the baths with the Epsom salt and the magnesium flakes, which if I could recommend one of the two, I'd shoot for the Epsom salt, because the magnesium flakes leaves this kind of nasty residue and you can't get it in your eyes, and the Epsom salt is just as effective and doesn't leave that same residue. But yeah, I could see if you have access to a sauna, or Joe Rogan, right? You live next door to Joe Rogan, you could use his cryo chamber, or you just have access to a regular sauna and cold baths. That I could see that really working, because the hot water does help significantly, especially just while you're in it. If I could just sleep in the hot bath, that really, really helps. It's just there's something about the hot water that is really powerful. So if you have a bath and you're really going through it, the hot bath really helps. I played around with the idea of taking a cold shower to kind of get the endorphins going. I've done that in the past with some success. But with these temperature changes, the moment I went to do it, I kind of felt this like cold flash, and I just couldn't bring myself to take a cold shower. That's like one of the really annoying things of the kratom withdrawal that can get super annoying is just your temperature is constantly fluctuating. It's like you're really hot one moment, really cold the next. That can get pretty annoying. So I haven't really been able to drag my carcass to the cold water, but I could see all that stuff helping. And, when you're dealing with the restlessness, it's like you just do anything you can. So if you could bring yourself to do a cold shower and then maybe a hot bath afterwards, I could see that really helping. And then experiment with the high-dose taurine and the high-dose L-theanine to get to sleep. It did provide a nice, a slightly more sedative effect than my normal dose. So that was helpful. So between that and kind of being on day 7, which for me is kind of typically the tail ends, because once again, I never take kratom beyond a year, because my body just starts rejecting it. My body just says, it's time to come off. I can never see myself using kratom for 5 years. Not that I'm saying there's something wrong with you if you have been on kratom for 5 years, but personally, like after a year, it's my body starts totally rejecting it and really starts kicking up these nasty symptoms that I just can't ignore. So for me, somebody who only takes kratom for a year at a time, 7 days is kind of the turning point for this kind of case. Taking kratom for a year, 20, 30, 40 grams per day, avoiding extracts. I was never really heavy into the extracts. That could be something that's a lot worse if you have been taking extracts. Luckily, I haven't. But yeah, if you're using powder for a year, and kind of the same dose range as me, you could probably expect somewhat similar results, right? But yeah, if you're taking, your use case might be different, your mileage may vary, but day number 7 for me has traditionally been kind of a turning point where things start to drastically improve. So we'll kind of see. I don't know if I'm going to be doing like from now on like a day 8, day 9 update. I don't know, I might, but it could be I kind of give these videos a break and come back at you guys a few days down the road, right? Because the first 7 days are, that's like the bulk of it, at least for me, being on kratom for a year. That's like really when you're in the thick of it. And then after that, it's just, the nagging symptoms, which there's really nothing to say about those other than You know, they're just there and they just slowly go away. But life starts to become more manageable. So day number 7, baby, in the books. Fallon, GoNootropics.com. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And I will see you very soon. Peace.